Welcome to Tony at 12. I'm Tony LeBlanc, and today I'm in conversation with Robert McDowall. And as usual, we are going to put the world to rights. Robert, good to see you.
Good morning, and there's a lot to put to right.
There is indeed.
There we are.
We're going to start off with the subject. Is it a word, wokery?
Well, it's interesting. When you sent me the agenda, I went back and looked at the origins of wokery, and believe it or not, it comes from the Frankfurt School of Philosophers immediately after the First World War. After the First World War, there was lots of sort of let me call cultural experiment in post-war Germany, and this was one of the things. And the idea was, quote, to create a more equal and fair society. Well, of course, that sort of disappeared a few years later when
Mr. Hitler took over.
Hitler came to power, and it really didn't sort of reassert itself until what one might call the civil rights movement in the 1970s. But interesting enough, the first time the word woke appears to have appeared in public form was that there was a singer called Leadbelly, who I think Lonnie Donegan recorded Rock Island Line was one of his songs, and he uses the word wokery, interestingly enough, in one of his songs. But anyway, that's pub quiz stuff, Tony.
I'm impressed with your knowledge, particularly of Lonnie Donegan. So there we are. It seems to me, looking at things, that the Equality Act 2010 may possibly have kicked it all off in terms of corporate participation.
I think you're right. That kind of solidified, or consolidated some of the manifestations of wokeism. And I think one of the other, I think misfortunate, others would disagree, but the legal profession, both the barristers, some of the judiciary, and some of the tribunals have taken this act and they have made law on the top of it, rather than interpreting it in a narrow way, that they have almost made law themselves. Now, that is, in my view, an unfortunate modern habit of the judiciary. I think a lot of lawyers would be better off as social reformers rather than lawyers. So they have expanded the scope of that act. You're absolutely right.
So in that case, then, Parliament is no longer supreme. And we're finding a situation where effectively almost adopting a bit of a US situation where the judges make law.
Well. So, and I mean, without taking you through some legal history, this all started off with that man, Lord Denning, in the 1960s and 70s, who would interpret the law in order to get the result he wanted from the case. But it's all snowballed since then. But yes, the judges make law, and it brings us back to debate whether they are there to make law or just interpret it. Parliament is there to make the law. The judges are there to interpret it. And I personally am a strict constructionist, but that is the way that's the way the legal profession has pushed things, frankly, and it has enabled a lot of those who want the corporate world to embrace wokeism to do it much more easily than they otherwise would have done.
So, who is actually behind all this? Because, it seems an attack by the elite on, everybody else in the country. I just, wonder, do they have a secret wokery committee of some sort?
I think there are two things going on. I'm afraid the schools and universities are encouraging and permeating some of this sort of conditioned thinking. So, the teachers and so on who come up with a lot of this stuff. It can be very difficult, particularly in the humanities in university, to express an opinion which is not mainstream. So it's sort of embedded it's certainly embedded in the academic culture, and it is becoming embedded in the corporate culture, particularly assisted by these wretched human resources divisions in companies. Sorry, I'm showing my prejudice. I apologise.
I've got nothing against you being prejudicial towards human resources and everything else. But, it just seems that it's getting very, very complicated. And it seems anybody who's got any sort of cause that they think is worthy of promotion to the public can just stand up and say, oh, I believe in this, this, and this, and therefore I expect you lot to follow me.
Well, that's right. And one of the attributes of wokeism is you only talk to those who are sympathetic or agree with your view.
Yeah.
Clearly, obviously, social media has enabled the viral impact of wokeism to get sort of deep into the human DNA, frankly. But I do think one of the and wokeism, if you like, started in the States, and I believe the supporters of Trump, if I may put it in that way, that is in part, not entirely, a reaction to wokeism, and we are seeing it with the rise of what I call the populist parties in Europe. So it is creating a backlash, and I don't think the pendulum has got much further to go before it will swing the other way. So if I were the woke community, I would temper my messages and propaganda.
But would you agree it is essentially left of centre, the whole concept?
Yes, it is, because I mean, in the ideal world, it is looking for justice, equality, encouraging those who are marginalized or in minorities. But they have brought those concepts to, if you like, all aspects of business and most aspects of social activity. Certainly in Western Europe. Obviously, wokeism hasn't really extended itself to the Asia Pacific or Middle Eastern region, or of course Russia, but it is a US Western European phenomenon primarily.
Yeah. And if you look at these various organisations, like for example Just Stop Oil, or the animal rights that managed to hold up the Grand National, and some say resulted in a horse having to be destroyed because it got overexcited. Obviously, we're not going to talk about individuals or human rights as such, but Just Stop Oil, I just cannot understand how they get away with it, Robert. I mean, effectively, they're obstructing the highway. That's illegal.
Yes, obstructing the highway. I mean, my personal view is that the police need to be more robust in their approach, and I think that is now starting to happen. But these people are entirely selfish. They only think of their own idealism, and I think the other point is that they don't understand how, if they want to make changes, a lot of changes are complex. They don't have the intellect or capabilities of implementing the changes in a way that would be acceptable to the broader range of society.
So, as far as the government are concerned on this, should they be putting more pressure on the police? I mean, you probably saw that example of that gentleman in his white van who started moving them along, and the police got hold of him and started roughing him up.
Well, of course, the police are very much on the sort of political defensive at the moment. Obviously, there's been, over the last 5 to 10 years, there's been a lot of cases of historic misjustice, abuse of procedure, and so on. So the police are on the defensive, and a lot of the people who have been appointed to either senior positions in the police force or the police have that sort of wokist sympathy, frankly, and we see that. But I think the government is starting to put pressure on them, and let's hope the pressure become stronger.
Let's talk about Nigel Farage and Coots and NatWest. And I just can't believe that a woman or any person, I cannot believe that a chief executive officer on 3 million a year is stupid enough to talk to a BBC reporter about somebody's personal bank details. Can't believe it.
Well, it's very crass, very stupid, and she clearly didn't learn the principles of confidentiality as she rose through the banks of the ranks in NatWest, and she has rightly paid the price.
Oh no, we've paid the price, Robert, because the UK is probably going to have to pay a 5 million in compensation.
Well, that should be contested, but there will be some compensation payments, and no doubt she will resurface somewhere else in another guise. But I mean, the Nigel Farage is only the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah.
Expression. There have organizations become debanked because, for example, the bank takes a view that, well, we no longer want to encourage property development, or we no longer want to encourage industrialized farming, and so on. So this is just one of the manifestations of it, and I hope the regulator is constructive in the sense of focusing on situations where banks close accounts or shut down sectors, and they need to understand the rationales for that, and also the processes by which they do it, because being unbanked today is far more difficult than it was 50 or 60 years ago, when people were paid in cash.
Yeah, they
might put it in the post office and so on. So it's almost it's a big problem, but I hope the UK regulator deals with it.
I mean, it seems to me, having sort of gone through a career in financial services, and finding out about anti-money laundering and everything else, that she broke the data protection law.
Yes.
I mean, presumably, action should be taken against her because of that.
Well, yeah, she's subject to regulation as well, and whether it's some sort of discipline as a regulated person needs to be taken. Pension obviously depends on the tribunal, but yes, she has violated financial regulations herself.
It's the old story, isn't it? If you're small, you get hammered, and if you're big, you get away with it. It's as simple as that, I think.
Exactly right. But I hope the regulator has a backbone to go after her, frankly.
Yeah, because I mean, this is an important situation. They really picked the wrong guy with Nigel Farage, didn't they?
Yes, he has been, is and always will be a controversial. He runs, and he's obviously taking this up as a cause now, and he's been pretty successful with most of his causes. The only one he's not achieved is getting a seat in Parliament.
Yeah. But he did run the EU for Parliament for a while, didn't he? So
yes, he did. Yes, he was a real thorn in the side of the European Commission.
The fact of the matter is that he's got this nightly program on GB News, which has a big following. So to actually take, sort of give him the boot was, in my view, totally crass.
Yeah. Well, it was at best, and I don't think they knew what they were taking on, frankly.
No.
And he has a big populist following, I'm afraid, and will continue to do so.
Yeah. Now let's get on to the Alderney situation regarding the Holocaust Commission. It's reared up again. First of all, how do you view the fact that the UK is interfering in an Alderney matter? Do we not have any sovereignty?
Well, the UK signed this Holocaust Convention, which stipulates that each country will commemorate the Holocaust, and there's various detailed rules and so on. And the UK signed that obviously on behalf of the Crown dependencies as well, because it's a foreign affairs issue. So they do have the right. Now, I think the issue is, question is whether Alderney currently, through, for example, the Hammer Memorial, through the recognizing the silt and so on, is doing sufficient. It's quite clear that one or two members of the Holocaust Remembrance Association, particularly this lady Gillian Carr, feels that Alderney is not. Ultimately, these things can end up. The State of Alderney could ask for a judicial review in the UK, but I'm afraid judicial reviews spearheaded by the Crown dependencies have not had a very successful outcome in the UK. The last one was a fishing dispute in 2016, where the States of Guernsey asked for a judicial review. They lost, and it cost them 150,000. Basically, if you're taking a judicial 150 to 200,000 now, I don't think Alderney's got the money to engage in that sort of litigation. But at the end of the day, they have to come to some agreement on what is additionally necessary under the convention to commemorate the Holocaust in Alderney. And of course, then you get on to, on the basis they come to some agreement, who's going to pay for it?
Yeah.
Now, the revenue account in Alderney is not very healthy at the moment. Can't afford it. Then you have who will determine the content, who will do the work, and it would also bring into focus whether the museum and the Alderney Society are doing enough to commemorate. So it's a pretty contentious issue. But unfortunately, the UK can interfere on the basis that it signed these conventions on behalf of the UK and the Crown dependencies. It then is a negotiation as to whether Alderney has, quote, done sufficient to commemorate it.
Okay. Definition of the Holocaust, is it exclusively Jewish people?
Well, that has historically been the case. Obviously there were others of different religions slaughtered during World War II. You've also had other what I call similar events to the Holocaust, such as the big Armenian slaughter in the 1920, which Turkey still failed to acknowledge. So unfortunately, these are not unique events, much as it pains me to say so. I think the Holocaust Convention, as signed by the UK, actually is focused on Jewish slaughter during the war, not the wider slaughter, Tony.
Okay, but looking at Alderney, I believe it is a fact that the Jewish people that lost their lives were a minority.
That is probably the case. That is probably the case. There was a lot more slaughter here, not just slaughter on the island, but people were slaughtered in transit. To here and from here. Do you include that? It's got lots of nuances to it.
So what's this commission trying to establish? The number of people that actually lost their lives here?
That's correct. I mean, my personal view is that pardon the pun, Pickles is in a pickle. He's going to become chair of this Holocaust Remembrance Association next year. He's got this issue buzzing around. There are problems in getting planning permission for the memorial in Westminster. and also one or two Jewish groups have said they want nothing more to do with it. So it's a bit of a big, and whether this so-called panel of experts comes up with a figure or not, I think is well, it'll be interesting, but it can only be a very wide and broad approximation at best, and I'm not really sure what more it does. It's tragic whether there were 400 slaughtered here or 4,000.
Yeah, sure.
Frankly.
Yeah.
That's that. So I don't know what the number really does. My own view is that this is a historic matter. It reflects on the way the UK did or did not handle matters at the end of the war and subsequently, and there may be some embarrassments that come out of it, but that's history, and historians and analysts and others will decide on these things. Tony, it's not really for the states of Alderney should frankly keep out of it, because they're damned if they do and they're damned if they don't.
Absolutely, and that's what Nigel Farage gave the impression in his interview last week, that they'll hopefully just sit on the touchline.
And I think he's right.
Yeah. But do you think there was a conspiracy to cover things up?
There was what we would nowadays call a cover up, because at the end of the war, clearly the security people who came here reported back. The Director of Public Prosecutions, this is the Labour government after the war, and one of the law lords who came from the Channel Islands, who looked after Channel Islands affairs in the UK during war, thought there were grounds for war crime trials for some people. Clearly, the government at the time wanted to get back to normality, however you describe it, and they didn't want these issues going on. We were entering the Cold War. They'd taken out what I might crudely call the top tier of war criminals. They wanted to get back to normal, so they wanted this stuff embargoed and leave it to those later dealing with it. I think the UK government has been rather naive in the sense that they should have dribbled a lot of the records out after 30 or 40 years on a sort of ad hoc basis, and we wouldn't have this problem, because when people think there are embargo records for 60, 70 years ago, it inevitably attracts attention.
Yeah. And I mean, for our non-Alderney viewers, we must make the point that Alderney was evacuated totally, apart from, I believe, one family in World War II. So there's no question of collaboration or anything like that.
No, nothing like that. Everyone left the island. Events happened on the island, but there's no reason for anyone here to be in any way embarrassed about it.
No, that's right. Yeah.
And I mean, I get the sense, and this is purely anecdotal, sort of looking as an outsider, but younger people see this as history.
Yeah.
When you get to people in their 60s and 70s, they perhaps understand, want to forget the issues because it was perhaps traumatic when they came back and so on. And I can understand that. But I mean, history ultimately will look at this and will come to its own decisions.
So you do see some sort of closure once they make this report, presumably?
Well, I hope so. I think, Candy, the only full closure will come when it's acknowledged that all the UK records on the issue have been released, and also importantly, things like the records of the royal courts in Guernsey and Jersey are released.
Yeah,
that's when you get full closure. But yes, I hope this brings some sort of closure to things, because until it does, there'll be lots of worldwide newspapers and periodicals coming here, because this has become an international story.
And it's not good publicity, is it, really?
It's not good publicity at all. So bring it to a conclusion as expediently as possible. And I think that requires release of all relevant records.
Let's get on to another thorny subject, decarbonisation.
Yes.
I understand the UK is only responsible for 1% of the emissions.
Well, yes, they are a minority contributor, and of course, this is one of the whole issues of climate change, energy transition, and so on. I mean, Russia, the Middle East, and much of the Asia Pacific region is really paying at best lip service to it. So you can't decarbonize part of the world and have part of the world carbonized. I think what is happening now is that there is a realization that the costs and duration for transition is going to be much longer than these aspirational pacts and conventions envisaged. I was in another capacity. I was on a call last week with some fund managers, and they do ethical investment, and they are getting increasingly concerned about the costs of transition with regard to some of the stocks they have in their portfolio. So projects start off with idealism. We're now coming to the stage of reality, but it is going to, it's energy transition, decarbonisation, all these things are going to take a lot longer, and that is a fact of life that people must accept.
Currently, we're committed to the abolition of the internal combustion engine by 2030 in terms of new vehicles sold.
Yep.
I note that even the EU has stretched this now to 2035.
Yes. I mean, I think you'll find a little more extension from the UK before long to comply with EU.
That makes a change. And the other big problem, Robert, apparently is that China will absolutely soak the world demand with electric cars, battery cars, obviously using up planet's resources to make the batteries, etc., etc. But they're now suggesting that each car could possibly have a bug in it, so that all of our movements can be monitored.
Well, that's right. I mean, cheaply and cheerfully. They may not always be that well made or durable, but there's a big market for them. They have the majority of the rare earth metals, which are important components. So yes, they will do this. Perhaps they will put in bugs. I can only assume that when they land on the dock site here, security officials will try to debug them. But yes, I'm sure it's a possibility.
But I heard that apparently they carried out this exercise of debugging on some government vehicles and found bugs in them. No,
that wouldn't surprise me. That's part of China's realpolitik, if I could put it like that, and it will always be so. And one has to not be surprised at it. So you have to try to debug these vehicles if it's possible. I frankly don't know enough about it to make any comment, frankly.
But this cost of the transition, the lack of infrastructure, the fact the national grid will have to be tripled, it's going to cost an awful lot of money, and presumably your fund managers have recognised that.
Well, they have, and they're getting much more defensive, and they are scrutinising much more the what I call the green energy, the climate change products and services which which come to them to invest in. So they are getting real. It's the governments have to come clean and say, look, and particularly when when finances in the world are very tight, there's a limited amount you can spend. And bless me, even the Labour opposition have said, well, we want to spend, was it 28 billion on energy and transition, but we can't do it in the first part of our term because we don't think we'll have the money. So I suppose that's a sort of an air of realism from the Labour Party.
Well, they could, of course, take the London Mayor's attitude on it and make ULEZ actually throughout the UK, because I mean, it's alleged that he's only doing this to make up for some of the deficit he's got in his finances, and of course, Uxbridge sort of showed that the British people aren't really ready for this sort of attack.
Well, that's right. I mean, he's now brought in a car scrapping scheme where presumably the London will buy at whatever cost polluting vehicles and from people, but he's on the back foot, and I think at the end of the day, any Labour administration will bring him into line, frankly.
Yeah, because I mean, the fact of the matter is, I think the scrappage allowance that he's making is about £2,000. The cost of a new electric van's £30,000. Right. It's just crazy. It really is.
Yeah. Yes, that's right. He's not being realistic, as you say. He's got a deficit, and ripping wheezers like this reduce the deficit. But he's on the back foot on it. The Labour opposition knows that, and they've got to yank him into the tent and make sure he behaves himself.
Finally, North Sea oil licenses. That's a good idea, isn't it?
Well, we are going to need oil for some time to come. Oil is also necessary for a number of products and services besides being used for energy purposes. You can look at it as a contingency. The time may come when green energy is much cheaper than oil extraction, in which case the energy companies will row back on the investment. But we need it, and more importantly, Scotland needs it.
So that's one for Ali if he's listening.
Yes. Scotland needs these revenues desperately. And I'm sure it puts the SNP in something of a, what's the word, a moral dilemma.
Yes, absolutely. Again.
Again, yes.
So we're rounding off on our Scottish bit. Can I thank you ever so, Robert, for sparing me some time today? And can I also take this opportunity of thanking you for putting me in touch with lots of very interesting people? I really appreciate all your efforts on that.
That's a pleasure. Many thanks then, Tony.
Okay, well, you take care. See you soon.
Bye.
Bye.